Tommy and Angelica and their parents are driving to celebrate the Passover Seder at the home of Dee Dee's parents, Boris and Minka. Angelica questions why she and her parents should be at the Seder at all, especially considering Boris and Minka aren't actually her grandparents. Drew tells Angelica she might end up having fun, that Passover is a meaningful holiday. Upon hearing the word holiday, Angelica gets hopeful and that means there'll be presents and is disappointed when Drew says there won't be. Charlotte says that Passover is about freedom, something more important than presents. And Angelica is now excited, thinking that partaking in the celebration of Passover means she is free and therefore can do whatever she wants. Stu is also having a reservation while celebrating Passover, believing it's boring and questioning how meaningful it is when there are no presents involved. Dee Dee says that for thousands of years, Passover has been a time for Jewish families to gather and reflect on the history of their people. Stu still thinks it will be boring. Following an argument with Minka about what type of wine glasses they should use, either the glasses that belong to Minka's mother or the one that belongs to Boris's father, Boris angrily storms out of the dining room when nobody's doing things this way. The two families arrive and Dee Dee tries comforting her mom, who believes Boris has run away. Stu is hopeful that this means he won't have to go through with the Seder, but Dee Dee insists it will still happen and that Boris can join them whenever he decides to come back, much to Stu's chagrin. Boris hasn't reappeared by the time Tommy's best friend Chucky and his dad Chaz arrive to join the celebration. When the Seder begins, the children set off to search for Boris, eventually finding him in the attic. Boris explains that he felt bad about yelling at Minka and had gone to look for her mother's wine glasses, but had come locked inside when the door closed behind him. It can't be opened from the inside. Angelica tests the door and inadvertently locks them all in again. Angelica tells Boris that he's not really missing anything and admits that she thinks that Passover is a dumb holiday. Boris tries convincing her otherwise by telling her and the boys the story of the Exodus, hoping to improve their understanding of Passover. As he talks, Angelica imagines herself as the Pharaoh of Egypt, who commands the Hebrew slaves, imagined as the other rugrats and numerous other babies, to throw their newborn sons into the Nile River. One Hebrew slave defies the order by putting her infant son Moses, imagined by Tommy, into a basket and setting the basket afloat up in the river. The basket and baby are delivered by Pharaoh Angelica, who shows Moses around her palace and kingdom and decides to make him her partner. As Boris explains that Pharaoh was unaware that Moses himself was actually a Hebrew, Chaz enters the attic looking for the children and becomes locked in with the rest of them. He sits down and listens as Boris continues. Years later, Boris says Moses stood up for an abused Hebrew slave, imagined as Chucky, was outed as a Hebrew. Tommy as Moses flees to the desert, where he becomes a shepherd and forgets about Egypt and the Pharaoh, till the voice of God calls him from a burning bush, telling him that he must find the Hebrews from slavery. Moses confronts the Pharaoh and demands that she free the Hebrews. She refuses and calls her guards, one of them boys, to drag Moses away. He curses her kingdom with terrible plagues until she relents and allows Moses to leave with the enslaved Hebrews. As Boris is explaining how the Pharaoh deceives the Hebrews and prevents them from leaving, Drew and Charlotte arrive and they get locked with the others. Boris resumes the story. The Pharaoh's treachery causes Moses to curse her one more time, this time with a plague on the firstborn children of Egypt. The Pharaoh, after realizing that she herself is a firstborn child from calling Drew on the phone, runs to Moses' home and bargains with Moses. He can leave if the cause of the final plague. Moses hesitates at first, reminding her the last time they made a deal. She changed her mind, but she nervously pretends that was a joke, which allows him to comply and lead the Hebrews out of Egypt. Meanwhile, Stu gets fed up with the Seder and accidentally makes Minka cry by admitting he's not Boris, until they realizes that almost everyone had gone, resulting in the three of them confused. Once the Hebrews start to flee Egypt, the Pharaoh reneges on her promise. After realizing that she set all the Hebrews free and leads out her remaining army to pursue them. Minka, Dee Dee, and Stu arrive in the attic to find the group enthralled by the end of Boris's story. Moses, concerned, calls down the power of God to part the Red Sea, which the Hebrews are approaching. They pass through the parted waters, which then crash back together behind them, engulfing the Pharaoh and her army. With the story over, the family gets up to finish the Seder, but this time, since Boris told the whole story of the Passover, they should just eat after all. Boris likes Minka's matzah soup, making her flush. Suddenly the wind blows the door shut, locking them all in. Boris decides to tell them another story, which Chaz at first thinks is about how the Hebrews wandered the desert for 40 years before finally reaching the promised land. But Boris reveals it's actually a story about how an aunt and uncle of his men at Passover Seder back in Russia.